How worried are you right now about the future of sports?
I'm very worried in the immediate future for the ongoing presentation of sports in this country. My early reaction was, the NBA is probably not going to get to play the rest of their season. Can they get to the postseason and play that in empty gyms somewhere? I heard from some people in the NBA who were feeling that, and their reps who were feeling that because especially of that local TV money, you have to hit 70 games to get that local TV money, that they would figure out a way to play the games. I said, okay, maybe that's possible if testing becomes more widely available and all this. But even the NBA, which should be easier to finish eventually than Major League Baseball or football, because the number of participants is smaller. Because they don't play in front of as many fans. You know, you could watch basketball in an empty gym and still see a good scrimmage, stuff like that. If it's going to be a problem for them, that does not bode well for Major League Baseball or the NFL, let alone what Dabo Swinney's talking about. Oh, the college football season. No, I don't see that at all. Guys, what was easy to predict was social distancing based on what you could see in other countries, based on what some of the health experts were saying. What was not as easy to predict, although some might argue easier than it should have been, was the disastrous response at the executive level of our federal government to this. First, you heard comments from the chief executive saying things like cases are going to be going down to zero first. You hear a lot of governors kind of poo-pooing the idea not that long ago of social distancing, things like that. And if you look at the number of fatalities per capita, right, if you look at per 100,000 people, we have the worst numbers in the industrialized world right now. And so because of that, and then we saw what happened in Singapore, Singapore is lauded for their early response and the social distancing and such, and now here comes the second wave. So there may be 2 and 3 waves of social distancing, even as it starts to relax. Really what we're looking at, until we can get a vaccine, it looks like, there will not be sports organized on a major level for some time now. I don't see it for the NBA. I don't see it for Major League Baseball. At this point, I don't see it for college football or the NFL. Certainly not an on-time, uninterrupted schedule. Maybe for sports like boxing or golf or MMA, where you have many fewer participants, if testing becomes more widely available and quarantine can be done effectively and you can do it in empty gyms, maybe. But for the major sports leagues, I don't see it in the foreseeable future.
Well, here's my thing. There is reason for concern, and I certainly won't sit here and deny that. But I'm just refusing to take the pessimistic view that so many other people are inclined to take. Although there are valid reasons to feel that way, I get it. But sports, the level of optimism that it can bring, that it can generate from a societal perspective, I think is something that can't be ignored. And I think its importance can't be minimized or dissipated in any way. And that's where I'm coming from with this. Clearly, we're living in different times. Clearly, this is one of those situations where you can't just go out there and play and assume that things shall return to normal. You know, you hear so many people spewing the rhetoric from FDR's presidential inauguration when he talked the only thing to fear is fear itself. No, it's significantly more complicated than that. We get that. But I understand the spirit in which people are coming from when they say such things. We have dealt with things in the past, challenges that we've had to overcome as a nation. This is the latest one. It's big time, no question about it. But we still have to understand that although things cannot be ideal, it doesn't mean that things can't be done. For example, we're talking about, you brought up, Max, boxing. You brought up the UFC. I brought up tennis and golf. Obviously, I brought up baseball as well. Now, it is a challenge, as Golick and Wingo discussed with me earlier this morning on their radio show, when you talk about getting the actual participants to specific locales, particularly on an international level, to compete in competition, because you got to travel, and Lord knows what challenges, particularly with different nations, that may take up. But in the end, if you have to compete, and for example, it's not going to be in front of an audience, so what? Right now, considering the times that we're living in, desperate times call for desperate measures. Just weeks ago, we sat up here and all of us said, no way in hell we're interested in watching basketball or any sport being played with no fans in attendance, the absence of that roar, the crowd, and everything else. We said that weeks ago. How many people would take that now? We'd all take it now. So we need to take that into consideration. The actual participants need to take that into consideration themselves and understand what it would do for us as a nation. If you're able to be safe, if testing is able to take place and the actual participants can compete without worry, and we just need to keep the fans at bay, so be it. Because 80,000 people in attendance is less than 80 million watching on television. We need to remember that.
And to that point, Stephen A., I choose optimism as well. The underlying thing, though, and I think to Max's point, some of it, and Max, correct me if I'm wrong, the optimism that we've, especially in our business and being a former athlete myself, is that the sport has always been one of those things to provide the optimism about things that were happening in the country. Sports has actually been that catalyst to bring us out of a lot of things that we've had transpire in our lifetime. And when that is threatened because of sports actually happening, people are looking for different ways to create the narrative for sports to become that once again. And that's what's so different about what we're dealing with in the country. So am I worried? No. My grandmother used to tell me all the time, God rest her soul, if you pray, don't worry.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.